Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle. The national race for president and a few local races dominated the week in politics here. We'll take a look at the national campaigns in a bit, but first a few shakeups coming to the Texas state capitol this week. We learned one of the most vocal gun rights advocates plans to run for the state Senate. C.J. Grisham announced his candidacy for Senate District 24 to fill the seat of Troy Frazier after he retires. Grisham is probably best known as the founder of Open Carry Texas. During the past session, Grisham lobbied for campus carry legislation and open carry. As part of the protest in the past, Grisham and others carried rifles out in the open, which is legal. While that's what he's best known for, Grisham did not mention gun rights in either his news release nor his campaign launch video. He instead focused on his military deployments to Afghanistan and to Iraq. Meanwhile, another member of the state legislature is stepping down a year and a half before his term ends. San Antonio Democratic Representative Joe Farias submitted his letter of resignation to Governor Abbott. Farias says he wants to spend more time with his family. Governor Greg Abbott has until the end of the month to set a date for a special election. Meanwhile, former Governor Rick Perry's national numbers slumped even more, from 2% in late July to just 1% now. His presidential future may depend on support from his super PAC. Perry's entire campaign staff is now working without pay. In July, his campaign only had about $800,000 on hand, but the super PACs raked in close to $17 million. Super PAC money can't just be handed over or pay the campaign salaries. However, working independently, the super PAC could do the groundwork, going door to door in support of Perry. His campaign says it will now pay for his travel, flying commercial, and it should work because Perry is one of the best at retail politics. On Thursday, Perry talked about the financial issues at his first event in South Carolina since the news broke about his staff's pay.
I'm never going to raise as much money as some of the other campaigns, but again, the presidency of the United States isn't for sale. So if it was, then Donald Trump would just write a check and be done.
Perry remains defiant, saying he will be able to pay his staff at some point, and that he's in it to win. To tackle all the developments, I'm joined by our roundtable, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for our media partner, the Texas Tribune, Abby Livingston, and from the Houston Chronicle, Mike Ward. Thanks, guys, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about that presidential election. Perry, a lot of people say he's puttering out because of all the financial stuff we've talked about this week. What do you think?
I think it's far too soon to tell. There's no way to call this anything but a bad week for Governor Perry. And it reminded many people of 2007. John McCain was in a very similar situation, ran out of money, and he ended up with the nomination. Things are not exactly the same. In some ways it's worse for Perry, but in other ways, namely that he has a super PAC supporting him, he's a little better off than John McCain.
Is it a lot more difficult for him to get donors this time around compared to the last campaign?
Absolutely. He raised $17 million in 7 weeks 4 years ago, and he raised 1.4 in about 6 weeks this time, or even 1.4 in 6 weeks, or in 4 weeks this time.
But the PAC's going to have a different kind of impact than last time, maybe, right?
Sure. The super PAC's got money, and that's what's going to propel Perry forward here at this point. He's a great retail campaigner, so he's in Iowa and various other states, South Carolina, whatever, but he does need money to make stuff happen, and the super PAC is going to support him at this point. That's a different dynamic than you had in presidential races years ago.
They're calling him a retail politician. Do you think that's really the case? Is this the Perry we've seen in the past?
Absolutely. I've seen him on the trail, and he is one of the most charismatic people I've ever seen in a room working over people. And so it's fascinating to watch that, and then nationally he's not breaking through. But every time I'm in a room with Iowans or New Hampshire residents, they fall in love with him, but they still don't commit to him.
This is the same reason he got elected in Texas so many times, is because he has the ability to connect with people one-on-one when he's out campaigning, and he's using the same gift on the campaign trail now. Now, whether that can bring him back to win the nomination, I don't know.
And after this past debate, I mean, he didn't do bad by any means, but he was overshadowed by Ms. Fiorina.
Absolutely, and that's the, I think before the debate happened, everyone viewed it as Perry was the guy who got knocked out. He was the 11th out of 10 to make it, so it was kind of his spot that was taken on the stage. And now the conversation has shifted to it should be Fiorina on the stage. So it's a very difficult situation for him.
And even if he does break through to that next tier, he's going to be kind of in the middle of that giant pack of Republicans. So that's still kind of a precarious position to be in right now.
Exactly. You've got 17 candidates, 16, 17 candidates running here, and you've got a lot of personalities involved. You've got a number of other really good candidates that have constituencies at various places around the country, and so it's a much different campaign, and it's a much different place than it was in the last presidential run-up for Perry.
Who's he had with him by his side on the campaign trail so far?
The times I've seen him, he's usually surrounded by a few staff members. He's got some really quality operatives in the state, especially in New Hampshire. I have not been on the trail with him when I've seen his wife, but I have not been out every time. But he seems to be doing really well on his own, and occasionally he'll have a state senator with him. He does have a very loyal following in his world.
What's he going to have to do to keep going?
He's going to have to get out there with a message that's going to propel him out in front of the rest of those candidates. Trump is a big problem for all of them right now because his voice is so loud, and he's able to make headlines just by waking up in the morning in some cases. And Fiorina came up after that last debate. You know, it's so far out. The poll numbers are going to be shifting. It's going to be a week-by-week thing. And Perry's game at this point is to play this thing forward and see if he can pull himself back up in this field.
I think one of the difficult things for him fundraising is that he's not a sitting governor anymore, so he doesn't have the implicit power to garner donations. But on the flip side, he now has time on his hands. He can go to these states and work these people one-on-one. These are states that are nowhere near the size of Texas. You really can get to meet not all, but a majority of the people who will vote in the caucuses and the primaries. And so using that personal charm would be a tactic. It's just difficult with 17 other candidates.
But that said, a lot of his selling power has been the Texas Miracle, and with the downturn in oil prices, the Texas Miracle, in a lot of people's respects, has cooled significantly, and I think that's going to be something he's going to have to be explaining, and it remains to be seen whether that's going to cool Rick Perry's sellability in other states. Having
one of the charges from his indictment knocked off, has that helped him, or have people really in the nation even paid attention to that?
I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to that at this point, frankly. I think if it came up that he was one of the two that was going into the convention and was a front runner, I think that would be a definite downside. Christie's had issues. You know, politicians aren't perfect just like anybody else, but if you've got a pending criminal felony indictment, that's probably going to be a problem when you get right down to the line.
I would agree completely. No voter I have found in these early states brings up the indictment or is usually even very aware of it. And if they are, these are conservative voters who believe that it was probably a politicized process anyway. And so it's just a very interesting thing. The bigger issue is his unfortunate debate performance in 2011, and he's doing everything he can to show that he is a much more educated and learned candidate this time.
With the culture of Texas leadership, we have another, you know, big leader, Ken Paxton, that is under criminal indictment. Does just that kind of idea about the leaders in Texas, does that hurt Perry or any of the Texas candidates right now?
I don't see that that's an issue so far in Perry's race. Paxton's kind of a separate case. This is something that happened before Paxton was elected AG, and you know, frankly, the Attorney General in Pennsylvania is under some kind of criminal charge now too. So, you know, in politics, stuff happens. Paxton's case, my guess, is going to play more significantly on the state scene here, and I really don't think it's going to be part of Perry's issue. I agree with her that a lot of Perry's supporters are conservatives, and they're going to see this as some kind of political thing anyway. So,
well, let's let Ted Cruz have the final word. What do you think? How's he doing?
Well, he just had a swing through the South. He is showing that he looks to compete past the early states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. He's running a national campaign. He's running to no one will get to the right of him, and whether or not that will help him get the nomination, this is a rough and wild primary that we've never seen before.
And he's kind of been a lot more quiet. He's quieter than we've seen him in the past, especially him in Congress. I was kind of expecting something more fiery from him in the debate.
He's taking a different track than these other campaigns are. He's going through the South right now. He's low profile as far as Donald Trump particularly. These other candidates are out there fighting Trump, and Cruz is quiet. The constituency that Cruz has in a lot of cases overlaps with whatever perceived constituency Donald Trump has. So Cruz is playing this totally different than some of the other candidates.
Well, Mike, thanks for being with us, and it was a pleasure having you here while you're in from D.C. for a little bit.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. Remember, you can join us every Sunday morning in the 8:30 half hour for a broader look at Texas politics. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.